It's October 29th, 2018, and it's time to review 5 of the most outrageous, infuriating, or just plain baffling things that have happened lately. It's your Facepalm 5. Let's count them down. Number 1. Right-wingers play innocent in wake of MAGA bombings. Last week, police arrested a 56-year-old man in Florida who is suspected of mailing bombs to a dozen prominent Democrats. The so-called MAGA bomber owns a van covered in pro-Trump right-wing stickers, has attended multiple Trump rallies, has social media accounts where he has shared far-right conspiracy theories and harassed and threatened Democratic politicians and progressive activists, and, just in case this dipshit didn't fit the profile enough already, he also has a history of making terroristic threats and domestic violence. Oh yeah, and he's a registered Republican. What could have possibly motivated this man to commit these crimes? I don't think we'll ever figure it out. Most Trump-supporting commentators and talk show hosts sure seem stumped. I mean, I guess it's just that we're all so divided these days, huh? Sure doesn't seem fair to point fingers at one side or the other, unless you want to point fingers at liberals and progressives, in which case, yeah, it's totally their fault. Actually, I'm oversimplifying. The reaction on the right has been a bit more complex. Before the suspected would-be bomber was identified and arrested, many right-wing commentators embraced the conspiracy theory that the bombing attempts were a false flag orchestrated by Democrats to influence the upcoming midterm elections. Some are still pushing this theory, but when the alleged perpetrator turned out to be an unhinged Trump superfan, many of them shifted to liberals and progressives brought this on themselves. Or my favorite, sure, he sent mail bombs, but what about when people are mean to Republicans in restaurants? Because those two are clearly the same thing. It might seem like a lot of folks on the right are desperate to deflect blame for this however they can, but this is just what reasonable people do, right? You propose an explanation for why something isn't your fault, and when new facts surface refuting it, you revise and come up with another explanation for why it's not your fault. Number 2, Republicans are embracing a gang of violent fascists. Of course, not all Republicans, not all Trump supporters are threatening or assaulting political opponents. Some are merely defending or offering a platform to those who threaten and assault political opponents. For example, a couple of weeks ago, Gavin McInnes, leader of the neo-Nazi group the Proud Boys, was an invited speaker of the Metropolitan Republican Club in New York City. The Metropolitan Republican Club has traditionally been regarded as a fairly mainstream organization, representative of the Republican Party establishment. And I say again, they invited the leader of a neo-Nazi group to give a speech. McInnes hosts his own online talk show, is shamelessly racist, misogynistic, homophobic, and transphobic, Islamophobic, and anti-immigrant, has written for white supremacist websites, and has not been shy about inciting his followers to violence and bragging about times when he himself has assaulted people. Following McInnes' speech at the Metropolitan Republican Club, a group of Proud Boys was videotaped assaulting people while yelling homophobic slurs. The next day, another group of Proud Boys assaulted left-wing protesters at a right-wing rally in Portland, Oregon. These are not isolated incidents. The Proud Boys and other factions of violent far-right extremists have gained an unprecedented amount of acceptance from mainstream Republicans since Trump was elected president. During his speech in New York, McInnes declared that the Republican Party needs people like him and his followers to act as foot soldiers. "Let us in," he says to the Republican establishment. "Let us in. We all want the same thing." And you know what? He's right. They do all want the same thing. Power. And they want to use that power to hurt the poor, the marginalized, the vulnerable. And while it is undeniably alarming to see an unapologetic hate group embraced by so many in the mainstream of a major American political party, in another way, this is the most natural thing in the world. The Proud Boys and other similar extremist fascist groups aren't invading the Republican Party, they're accepting an implicit invitation that the party has been extending for decades to people like them. They're coming home. Number 3, Trump administration moves to officially erase trans people. Speaking of Republicans using their power to hurt the marginalized, last week the New York Times reported that the Trump administration is considering a change to the definition of gender that would essentially erase transgender people as far as federal civil rights law is concerned. In a memo obtained by the Times, the Department of Health and Human Services proposes that gender be defined as binary, male and female, unchangeable, and determined at birth according to genitalia, with genetic testing being acceptable evidence to resolve any ambiguities. The justification for this, according to the memo, is to establish a definition of gender that is, quote, grounded in science. Given the fact that intersex people exist, it seems odd to argue for a strict binary definition of gender on the basis of science. But since when do transphobes care about science? Their respect for science is performative and entirely at the service of legitimizing their intolerance of trans people. Defining sex and gender in a way that includes trans people is not only scientifically sound, it's the only humane option. The Trump administration officials pushing for this new definition claim that under President Obama, LGBTQ activists unfairly imposed a broader definition of gender. But I don't understand who this is supposed to have been so unfair to. Insisting on a concept of gender that accounts for trans people and makes room for those who don't fit neatly into either side of the male-female binary harms no one and helps to ensure that federal civil rights protections apply to the maximum number of people who experience discrimination, harassment, and even violence simply because of who they are. Protecting people against unjust discrimination is what civil rights laws were created to do. Not that I expect that to be persuasive to those in favor of this new definition. I'm sure if they had their way, they'd get rid of anti-discrimination laws altogether. All such laws do is make the lives of people like them more difficult. And what's the point of that? Number 4, right-wing fear-mongering about immigration shifts into high gear. I don't want to alarm you, but apparently there's a huge caravan of refugees on its way to the US-Mexico border. Most of the people in the caravan are from Central America, but according to Trump, some of them might be Middle Eastern. Or not. Who really knows? I mean, there's no evidence to suggest that there are Middle Eastern people in this group of migrants, and even if there were, that's only an automatic cause for concern if you're a xenophobic dipshit like Trump. But knowing that xenophobic dipshits like him are his strongest supporters, Trump has been using the migrant caravan to rile up his base at every opportunity. Besides baselessly speculating that there might be scary Middle Eastern people in the group, Trump has also exaggerated the significance of this particular caravan, declaring it a national emergency, a threat to national security, and vowing to call up the military to seal the border to stop it. The United Nations estimates that the caravan currently includes around 7,000 people. That sounds like a lot until you take into account the fact that around 50,000 people were apprehended crossing the US-Mexico border without authorization just last month. Trump and others are also misrepresenting the purpose of the caravan. Trump regularly describes these people as criminals trying to sneak undetected into the country, but most of those in this caravan are refugees from Honduras, Guatemala, and El Salvador who fled violence, drought, and political and economic instability to seek asylum in the United States, which they are legally entitled to do. It's difficult to pick which part of the Trump presidency has been the most depressing or alarming, but for me, a strong contender is how determined Trump and his officials are to erase Emma Lazarus's beautiful poem, The New Colossus, seen here mounted on the pedestal of the Statue of Liberty, and replace it with this. And now, the segment devoted to some of the other things Donald Trump has done recently to disgrace the presidency and embarrass and/or endanger the United States and the rest of the world. It's number 5, the further misadventures of Lord Dampnut. Please keep in mind, as always, the following is not a complete list, and this time the list will be even more incomplete than usual, because while there are plenty of things that Trump has done recently that are disgraceful and potentially dangerous, for this video, I am going to focus on just two of those things. The first is the fact that Trump and his administration are assisting the government of Saudi Arabia in obfuscating the truth regarding the murder of journalist Jamal Khashoggi. Khashoggi was murdered in the Saudi consulate in Istanbul, Turkey on October 2nd. Several of these suspected killers are close associates of Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, and according to Turkish intelligence, the killing was carried out on the orders of the prince. The official explanation has shifted multiple times, as demanded by the evidence in the case, with the Saudi government first denying any knowledge or involvement, then most recently acknowledging the killing and blaming it on rogue agents. Germany recently suspended all arms shipments to Saudi Arabia as a result of the Khashoggi killing, and the European Union passed a non-binding resolution urging all of its member nations to do the same. Trump's response has been less robust. He has pretty much accepted each official denial/explanation from the Saudi government without question. He did recently say that the killing of Khashoggi was a very bad original concept that was carried out poorly and led to the worst cover-up in the history of cover-ups, but that's as far as he's gone. A critique of the poor planning and sloppy execution of the murder of Jamal Khashoggi, which I guess is what he thought people wanted to hear from him. Doesn't surprise me. Trump reserves his moral outrage for the journalists who accurately report the things he says and does, leaving none left over for agents of authoritarian regimes who murder journalists. The second thing is Trump's clueless, reckless, and utterly grotesque response to the aforementioned attempted bombings of prominent Democrats. As I said in the first segment, the suspected bomber is a proud, open supporter of Trump, and his targets were people who have been ridiculed and insulted and vilified by Trump on Twitter and on stage during rallies. In the wake of the bombing attempts, Trump has made unconvincing calls for peace and unity and civility, only to return to attacking the media and listening approvingly as supporters chant angry slogans referencing his political opponents and critics. He also took to Twitter to complain that everyone was talking about this bomb stuff just when Republican candidates were starting to build some momentum going into the midterms. When a reporter asked Trump if he would consider toning down his rhetoric, he insisted that he was toning it down and said he should probably be toning it up, since everyone was being so unfair to him and other Republicans. Last week, a man mailed bombs to 12 people. It's extremely likely that he did this because, in his mind, he was following instructions from the president. And in response to this, Trump has refused to accept any responsibility for inciting his followers to violence and has continued to encourage anger and hostility toward journalists and his political opponents. He's also continued to engage in racist fearmongering about immigrants, to warn his supporters against the threat posed by globalists, globalist being a well-known anti-Semitic dog whistle, and last week, he declared himself to be a nationalist. What color nationalist? I think you can guess. It's not a mystery. It hasn't been for some time. So here's the deal. And I'm speaking to my fellow Americans here, international viewers. I hope you don't mind. This is the last Facepalm 5 video that I will make before the midterm elections on November 6th. And my parting thought to all of you is this. Check your registration, educate yourselves about the candidates on your ballot, and on November 6th, turn up to your polling place and vote for candidates up and down that ballot who will fight Donald Trump and the Republicans and their policies. Vote for representatives in Congress and senators who will oppose Trump and who will vote to remove him from power, if at all possible. The worst nightmare for Donald Trump and the Republican Party is huge voter turnout. That's why voter suppression is such a key part of their strategy. They don't want you to vote. They will stop you from voting if they possibly can, so do not let them do that. Fight them. Show up at the polls and vote against them. I know this sounds alarmist to some of you, and I honestly hope that your instincts are more correct on this than mine, or I hope that I am overreacting or being a bit sky is falling with this. I've used terms like fascist. I've used terms like white nationalist. I honestly do not believe that those terms are hyperbolic, given what we know about this president, his associates, and their supporters. We might only get one shot at stopping this, or at least slowing it down, and that shot is coming up on November 6th. So that's what I have to say to you. Please, as a fellow American, on Election Day, stand up, show up, and vote. Hey folks, hope you got something out of this video, and if you are of my fellow Americans, I really hope one of the things you got from it was motivation to go vote on November 6th. If you did enjoy this video, please click like and share it and subscribe to the channel if you're not subbed already, and also please consider helping me to make more videos like this by becoming a supporter of this channel through Patreon. You can go to patreon.com/Steve Shives to become a patron of this channel for as little as $1 a month. And believe me, those $1 a month pledges really, really add up and help me out like you would not believe. But if you can afford it and you think I'm worth it and you pledge at an amount of $5 a month or more, you earn yourself a shout out at the end of the Facepalm 5, just like these folks, my newest $5 or more per month patrons. And they are John Jenkins, thank you, John. Jesse Earl, thank you, Jesse. Muldred D. Malcontent, thank you, Muldred. Simon Archambault, thank you, Simon. A Skeptosaurus, thank you, A Skeptosaurus. The Bourgeois Bohemian, thank you, Bourgeois Bohemian. Mindy Newell, thank you, Mindy. And Aisha's Odd Obsession, thank you, Aisha. Thanks to everybody who is a patron at whatever level and however long you have been. Thanks to all of you for watching, whether you're patrons or not. I appreciate all your support in whatever form it takes. Go vote, fellow Americans, and I'll see you next time.